It was in the fall of 2010, and we get together at microbiology rounds every morning.
And we have a chance to interchange information.
We have an opportunity at micro rounds to sort of pull the whole picture together.
It was at one of those microbiology rounds where the lab staff reported that they had gotten a Bacillus cereus, an organism out of the blood of a particular patient.
And I can remember turning to Elaine in the microbiology lab and looking at her at rounds and saying, "That seems a little unusual."
It's a little bit unusual to see it in blood cultures.
It wasn't shortly thereafter that we actually had a patient who had an infection.
So I was aware of the first patient because of Susan talking about that patient at micro rounds.
And so I started just an investigation based specifically on that one case, but knowing in the back of my head that there were a couple others that didn't make sense.
I believe the epidemiology team were looking at the charts, at the patient charts, to see what the commonalities were, but many of the patients were so complicated, it was really hard to tell.
One weekend, I was checking my email. There was a patient who was up on the floor.
And this patient was not a complicated patient like the first patient. So I sent Susan an email and said, I think I have a simpler patient who maybe has the same thing, and then you, because she's such a good detective, will be able to figure out the situation.
I started my line list and started looking at patients who had this organism in their blood.
And so she's the one who then tried to put those two patients together and physically, went up and said, where was this patient located? Where was their IV?
And within just a day, she had identified a number of possible fomites that could have transmitted this organism to the patient.
She came in with an armful of products, and she sort of laid them out on the table and said, we need to culture all these things.
And by Wednesday morning, they shared with us
that what appeared to be the same organism was in these alcohol pads that people use all over the world, thinking that they're sterile. But in fact, they're not labeled as sterile.
So that launched the investigation.
Within days, she recalled all of the alcohol pads in the hospital, which is a monumental task.
At the same time, we were also notifying the health department.
When Susan called us, she had so much information.
And they in turn notified the CDC and also the FDA.
The fact that alcohol pads were even considered, I was very impressed, because bacteria aren't supposed to grow in alcohol pads. Why would you ever think that they would be contaminated?
They actually halted production after some period of time, and alerts went out
saying that non-sterile alcohol pads should not be used for patient care, that this really needed to be sterile alcohol pads that were being used.
And there was a lot of questioning and commotion over this, and a lot of angst by infection control people in their facility. The information they were receiving wasn't all that extensive, and it takes time, and we were planning to publish our work, but that takes time to go through that process and have things reviewed, and eventually got something put out through the CDC that gave more to that story, and then eventually published it in one of our peer-reviewed journals.
I will tell you that on that day, in microbiology rounds, I would have let that bacillus pass, but she didn't.
And I feel like I am one of the luckiest people to have been, that first of all, they thought I was able to do this job, and that they would teach me the qualities of being an epidemiologist in infection control and prevention, and they have been the most wonderful mentors for me. I couldn't ask to work with better people than the people I work with here. I'm Susan Dolan.
My name is Elaine Dowell.
My name is Jim Todd.
My name is Wendy Bamberg.
My name is Mimi Glaudet.
I'm honored to be an infection preventionist.
And I'm a difference maker.
And I am a difference maker.
And I'm a difference maker.
And I am a difference maker.
And I am a difference maker.